Chapter 1. Cruising the Neighborhood. Louis Jr. liked the Saturday drives he and his father took around the neighborhood. The two of them made pretty much the same circuit every week. They stopped at apartment buildings, they stopped at the laundromat and other businesses where his father would run inside to talk for a few minutes. Everywhere they went, people wanted to talk with Louis Sr. Their favorite stop was the bakery, where they would always pick up some pastries for after dinner and a few for the ride. The last stop was the pork store, where they would pick up whatever Louis's mom told them to get for supper. Those drives were some of the best times Louis Jr. had with his father. On any given Saturday, the street outside the apartment building where Louis, his wife, and his son Louis Jr. lived was busy. There was laughing and yelling from kids playing in the street and guys hanging around outside, and when Louis Sr. came out of the building, all the guys outside stopped what they were doing to talk. Every Saturday, Louis and his father made their way through all the handshakes, pats on the back, and brief conversations on the way to their car, which was always parked right up front. Louis and his father got in the car, and when Louis Sr. waved his hand, the kids in the streets divided with their bats and balls and moved to the curb and turned their playground back into a street. Louis and his father pulled out of the parking spot and drove down the street with kids to their left and to their right. As Louis drove the car down the street, he stuck his hand out the window to catch the wind, and the kids flowed back into the street behind the car, making it a playground again and blocking other cars from passing. At the corner, they turned onto the main street in the neighborhood. Louis Sr. stuck his head out the side window far enough so that he could look forward and drive. He drove like that down the street, with the wind slicking his hair back. "Drying your hair, Pop?" "You got it." Junior stuck his head out the window like his father, except he couldn't quite reach except for the very top of his head, the wind making a mess of his hair. They pulled their heads back in. "All dry, buddy?" Louis said to his son. "All dry here, Pop. The best hair dryer in town, buddy." "The best, Pop, the best." After a few more blocks, they stopped at a red light. In front of an apartment building, a couple men were sitting and talking on the front stoop. One of the men got up and walked over to the car. Junior played with the car radio, and the man crouched down so that he could talk to Louis Sr. When the street light changed, they kept talking. When they were done talking, the man handed Louis Sr. an envelope, stood up, and walked back and sat on the stoop again. Louis Sr. put the envelope in the glove compartment, and the street light turned red. He looked both ways for traffic and said to his son, "What do you do before you cross the street?" "Look both ways to see if any cars are coming, Pop." "That's it, buddy." Senior hit the gas and they cruised through the intersection. "Say, see if you can find something good on the radio." "I've been looking, Pop. I can't find anything but static." At the next red light, Louis stopped the car, pulled out a comb, and slicked his hair back. He stuck his hand out the window and pulled in the mirror so he could check that his hair was all in place. He turned his head from side to side, checking from ear to ear. He pulled his head back in the car and pushed the mirror back out, looked both ways for traffic, and they drove off. "Everything look good, Pop?" "All good here." Louis handed his son the comb. "Here you go, slick it back. We want to look sharp." They drove down the street with Senior's arm out the window holding onto the mirror. Junior combed his jet black hair back like his father. He put the comb back in the glove compartment and stuck his hand out the window. His hand barely made it out, but he did get it out far enough to cock it up and down and ride the wind like a wave, and that's what Saturday drives were all about. "Pop, don't forget to pick up the sausage like Mom said." "Yeah, buddy. Make sure and remind me again before we head home. What do you say we make a quick stop at the bakery?" "Sounds like a plan, Pop." Louis came out of the bakery with 4 bags in one hand, an envelope in his other hand, and 2 loaves of bread under his arm. The ends of the long skinny bread stuck out of the paper wrapped around them. He put the bread in the 3 of the 4 bags in the car in the rear seat. He got in the car and put the envelope in the glove compartment and put the last bag on the seat between him and his son. They just made the bread, came right out of the oven. It's still warm. Are we going to make it home without eating the ends this time? "Well, Pop, it depends on what's in this bag here. I got 2 lobster tails, an almond horseshoe, and a fig bar. What do you think?" Louis Jr. opened the bag and analyzed the situation. We have a running chance, Pop." He looked up at his father. "It's a definite maybe." Louis Sr. laughed and said, "Well, let's get started. Break out those lobster tails." Louis Sr. started the car and pulled onto the street while Junior handed him a lobster tail from the bag. Then he got one out for himself. They made their way around town, making stops at the laundromat, Rocky's Pizza, the Southside weightlifting gym, and a few more places where guys were hanging out on the front stoop of a building or on a street corner. By the time they were done, the bag in the front seat was empty and the glove compartment was full of envelopes. "Don't forget the sausage, Pop." "You got it, Gerudo's. Then home for sausage and peppers." "Let's go, Pop." Louis parked the car right in front of Gerudo's pork store. "Okay, buddy, you wait here. I'll be right back. What did Mom say to get?" "2 pounds, Pop. Some hot if you want it, but the rest sweet." "Are you eating hot, buddy?" "Yeah, Pop. I'll have a piece with you." "Okay, then. I'll be right back." Louis got out of the car and walked into Gerudo's. Mr. Gerudo was at the butcher block. He was working on a half a hog and was separating the ham from the side and the shoulder. Mr. Gerudo was a relic from an age where the local butcher bought whole hogs and reduced them to chops, bacons, and hams in minutes. "Mr. Gerudo," Louis called. "Huh?" Mr. Gerudo's old eyes looked over his glasses and searched his shop, expecting to be no one there. "Mr. Gerudo, how you doing today?" Mr. Gerudo lifted his head and found Louis at the front counter. "Louis, wait a minute. I'll be right over." Gerudo slid both sides of the knife against the side of the block to clean off the meat and fat, then put it down. He cleaned his hands on a towel that was red with blood. His hands were pudgy, bloated, and cracked. Old wounds from a long career of working a knife scarred his fingers and palms. Gerudo walked over to the counter and reached behind his butcher apron and into his pants pocket. He pulled out an envelope and threw it on the counter in front of Louis. "Thanks, Mr. Gerudo. How was business this week?" Business is business. The meat I'm getting from the distributor is crap. You know that they breed these hogs so lean at these new corporate pig farms that they add pork flavor into the ground pork. They tell me people don't like the fatty meat, so they breed them lean and sell it as healthy. Without the fat, the pig tastes like dry leather, so they add pork flavoring to the ground pork they sell. Can you believe that shit? I don't do none of that shit here." "Well, Mr. Gerudo, I believe it. Wouldn't be the craziest thing I've heard, but it's right up there. How are the numbers?" "I think there might be another numbers game in the neighborhood." "Oh, yeah? Why do you say that?" "Every week, I get less best than the week before. This envelope here," Mr. Gerudo picked up the envelope and showed it to Louis. "This here gets thinner and thinner. Soon there's going to be nothing left." Louis goes through this conversation every week with Mr. Gerudo. "People aren't playing the numbers much anymore," Gerudo says. "We gotta push them. You kids gotta push the numbers, and you gotta put an angle on it. They call it retro, Louis. The kids will play today, but you gotta get out there and sell it as retro. Maybe a commercial on television. Use some girls. Show some skin. You know, the way they do in Vegas." "You put a commercial on TV and we'll all end up in the can," Louis laughed. "No commercials. That's not something we can do. No commercials, no signs in the window. You know how this game is played, Mr. Gerudo." Mr. Gerudo tapped the envelope on the counter. "We can't let these big companies take over, Louis. These rackets have taken over all the local numbers games. You know how they get away with it? I'll tell you how. They pay the right people and call it a casino. That's how they get away with it." "All right, Mr. Gerudo, okay. I'll think about how to drum up some more interest in the numbers." "Good, Louis, good. Now you're thinking." "For now, let me have 3 pounds of sausage, 1 pound hot and 2 pounds sweet." Mr. Gerudo smiled at his victory over the numbers, and Louis smiled back. He went into the walk-in refrigerator to get the sausage. Louis picked up the envelope and looked at the money inside. It was lighter than it ever was. Maybe a little pushing might get that envelope a little thicker. Who knows? The numbers game might be far from over. Before Louis gave it more thought, Gerudo came out holding the sausage in his hands. He wrapped the hot sausage and the sweet sausage separate in white paper, then in brown paper bag, and placed it on the counter and rang up the bill. Louis paid the bill, and he took the bag. "Mr. Gerudo, you still make the best sausage in town. You can't buy better in any supermarket nowhere. Have a good weekend. See you next week." "You too, Louis. Say hi to the wife." Louis opened the front door and the cowbell jingled, and Mr. Gerudo went back to the butcher block. Louis put the sausage in the back seat of the car, then got into the front. He put the envelope in the glove compartment and pushed the door closed. All right, ready to go see Mom? Yeah, Pop. Let's go see Mom. Looks like the bread might make it. Well, we're not home yet, buddy, but it's a definite maybe.